Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode in this series on the history of Serbia and the Serbian people. In the previous one, we learned about the Slavic migrations, the settlement of the Serbs in the Balkan Peninsula, and how the members of the first Serbian dynasty tried to balance their own interests and ambitions against those of their more powerful neighbors, chiefly Bulgaria and the Byzantine Empire. In this episode, we will see how the successors of the Vlastimirović family fared in this struggle throughout the 10th, 11th and 12th centuries. Let us begin. We left off with the tragic death of Prince Časlav, the last of the Vlastimirović line, who fell in battle against the Hungarians around the year 950. The surviving written sources tell us little about what followed, or are unreliable. However, based on what we know about events in the wider Balkan region, we can conclude that this was a turbulent period. The chief source of instability was the devastating, decades-long war between the Byzantine Emperor Basil II and the resurgent Bulgaria under the Konstantinopole dynasty. At the beginning of the 10th century, the Bulgarian ruler Simeon inflicted a series of crushing defeats on the Byzantines, forcing them to recognize him as the Emperor of the Bulgarians in 925. His successors, however, were pale shadows of their predecessor. By the 960s and 70s, Bulgaria had become an object of contention between the princes of Kiev and the Byzantines. In this struggle, the Byzantines prevailed, restoring the lower Danube as the imperial frontier after more than 300 years. Yet, their victory proved short-lived. In 976, when Basil II ascended the Byzantine throne, he was challenged on two fronts: in Anatolia, where powerful landowners rebelled, and in the Central Balkans, where resistance to Byzantine domination emerged in the remnants of Simeon's empire. Although Simeon's grandson, Roman, was crowned Tsar of the Bulgarians, the real power lay in the hands of a general named Samuel. When Roman died in 997, Samuel formally assumed the crown. The war between Basil II and Tsar Samuel, and later his successors, lasted until 1018. During this time, the Byzantines lost control of a significant portion of the Balkans, and Serbia also fell under Bulgarian rule. In earlier conflicts, the coastal Serbian principalities had been spared from Bulgarian incursions, but not this time. In 998, Samuel invaded Duklja. Facing an overwhelming force, Prince Jovan Vladimir of Duklja surrendered to spare his people. Initially imprisoned, he was soon freed after, according to popular memory, Samuel's relative, Kosara, had fallen in love with him. They married, and Vladimir was restored as ruler, although now as Samuel's vassal. In 1014, after decades of brutal fighting, Basil II dealt a crushing blow to Samuel's forces at the Battle of Belasica, after which he ordered the blinding of thousands of captured soldiers. This act earned him the moniker the Bulgar Slayer. According to legend, when the blinded soldiers returned to Samuel, he was so overwhelmed with grief that he died. Civil strife followed among Samuel's successors. Jovan Vladimir became entangled in these conflicts and was eventually beheaded on the orders of Tsar Ivan Vladislav. Because of his piety and martyrdom, he was later canonized and became the first Serbian saint. In 1018, Basil II finally emerged triumphant. The Byzantine Empire once again became the dominant power in the Mediterranean. Although ruthless in war, Basil proved magnanimous in victory, allowing local rulers to retain their positions in exchange for loyalty. With minimal resistance, the Byzantines regained control of the entire Balkan Peninsula. To keep it, they implemented several measures. One was to preserve a degree of ecclesiastical autonomy. Basil allowed Samuel's patriarch to remain in office, now as the autocephalous Archbishop of Ohrid. This meant that he was independent from the Patriarch of Constantinople and answered only to the Emperor. In this arrangement, the former Principality of Serbia was placed under the jurisdiction of the Archbishop, a development that would have lasting consequences after the Great Schism of 1054, deeply influencing Serbia's religious orientation. Another measure pertained to territorial organization. Some areas were annexed directly and organized into themes, while others became vassal states, avoiding direct confrontation with Basil's forces. The status of the former Vlastimirović lands is unclear. Some sources claim they were included in the theme of Sirmium, while others mention local rulers in Zahumlje, Bosnia, and Raška, a region in present-day southwestern Serbia, who fought as Byzantine allies against Duklja. Although the Byzantines managed to maintain control over much of the Slavic Balkans for the next century and a half, their grip began to weaken soon after the death of Basil II, largely because his successors were preoccupied with palace intrigues and raids of the Balkans by the Pechenegs and Cumans, another wave of nomads from the Eurasian steppe. One of the first challengers to Byzantine authority was a nobleman from Duklja, Stefan Vojislav. In the 1030s, he led two uprisings against the Byzantine rule, and in 1040 defeated a Byzantine army by trapping it near the town of Bar, in one of the many gorges that characterize the landscape of Montenegro, which roughly corresponds to the medieval Principality of Duklja. Although he did not achieve full independence, he forced the Byzantines, who were simultaneously facing a larger rebellion led by descendants of Samuel in the Central Balkans, to accept him as a vassal. Stefan Vojislav is considered the founder of the Vojislavljević dynasty. Besides Duklja, he likely brought Travunia and Zahumlje under his rule, making the coastal regions for a time the center of Serbian political life. I would now like to shortly address some comments on the previous video concerning the ethnic character of the coastal principalities of Pagania, Zahumlje, Travunia, and Duklja, which I referred to and continue to refer to as Serbian. I want to reiterate that in Serbian mainstream historiography, these principalities are considered to have been Serbian primarily because the Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII describes them as such in his work De Administrando Imperio, the most reliable of the few surviving sources on Serbian early medieval history. More information on why this topic is controversial and why Constantine VII is considered the most reliable source on this period is provided in the pinned comment below the video. Now, let us return to the exploits of the Vojislavljević dynasty. Around 1050, Stefan Vojislav was succeeded by his son Mihailo. He became the first Serb to bear the title of king, granted to him by Pope Gregory VII around 1077. Although today Serbs are overwhelmingly Orthodox, in the 11th century the situation was more fluid, especially in the coastal regions, which, although under Byzantine political control, remained within the papal ecclesiastical sphere of influence. After the Great Schism of 1054, when Christendom was formally divided, Mihailo's royal coronation served both Gregory VII and him. The Pope used it to assert influence over the Balkans, while Mihailo used it to lessen Byzantine domination. Mihailo began to openly oppose the Byzantines after the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, when the Byzantines were thoroughly defeated by the Seljuk Turks, a new power in the Middle East, and lost, over the following decade, almost the entirety of Asia Minor, the core region of the empire since the 7th century. That disaster prompted another uprising in the Central Balkans aiming to restore the Bulgarian Empire, and the rebels invited Mihailo's son, Constantin Bodin, to take the lead. In 1072, he was proclaimed the Emperor of the Bulgarians. Initially successful, the rebels captured the lands between Niš and Kastoria. However, their forces split, allowing the Byzantines to defeat them separately. Constantin Bodin was captured, but later freed by his father. Eventually, Bodin succeeded Mihailo as king of Duklja. At first, Bodin remained a Byzantine vassal, but when the Normans, who had expelled the Byzantines from southern Italy and established their own kingdom, invaded Epirus in 1081, Bodin took advantage of the chaos to renounce Byzantine authority. While the Norman-Byzantine conflict raged, he expanded his rule across the Dinaric Alps into the old Vlastimirović heartlands. However, his ascendancy was short-lived. The energetic emperor Alexios I Komnenos repelled the Normans, after which his general, the Strategos of Dyrrachium, defeated and captured Bodin, forcing him once again into vassalage. Around the same time, relatives whom Bodin appointed as governors in the interior seized power for themselves. The Serbian political center thus shifted back inland as Duklja fell into anarchy in the 12th century, torn apart by internal strife and Byzantine interference. After breaking away from Bodin's kingdom, the old Vlastimirović lands split into two realms that developed separately: the Banate of Bosnia in the west and the Grand Principality of Raška in the east. It is Raška that modern Serbia regards as its main medieval precursor. In fact, throughout the High and Late Middle Ages, Raška and Serbia were used interchangeably, especially by foreign writers. Power in Raška was held by two brothers, Vukan and Marko. It is uncertain whether Vukan ruled alone or shared power with Marko. Although Marko's descendants succeeded them, historians refer to their line as the Vukanović dynasty, after the elder brother. Its rulers bore the title Veliki Župan, translated as Grand Prince or Grand Duke. Vukan and Marko exploited the Byzantines' weakness after the Manzikert and the Norman invasion. They were the first Serbian rulers to establish a strong presence in the regions of Kosovo and Metohija, which would later become central to the Serbian national identity. They also raided Byzantine territories around Skopje and Vranje. Although they likely did not retain much of these lands, they forced Emperor Alexios I to recognize them as autonomous rulers of Raška under Byzantine suzerainty. Their successor, Marko's son Uroš, faced a more powerful Byzantium. After the First Crusade, Alexios I regained much of Asia Minor and reasserted imperial authority. Uroš found an ally in the Kingdom of Hungary, which was also in conflict with Byzantium over Belgrade and Sirmium, key strongholds controlling access between the Pannonian Plain and the Central Balkans. In 1127, when war broke out, the Hungarians controlled Sirmium, while the Byzantines held Belgrade. The Hungarians demolished the city and advanced deep into the imperial territory, reaching Philippopolis, while the Serbs seized the fortress of Ras. Nevertheless, the Hungarians ran out of steam, and by 1129 the Byzantines had returned to the Middle Danube, made peace with them, and turned on the Serbs, ravaging Raška and taking captives to Asia Minor. Grand Prince Uroš I became a Byzantine vassal once more. Seeking to secure his dynasty's position, he forged a closer alliance with Hungary by marrying his daughter Jelena to the Hungarian prince and future king Bela II. Jelena's brother Belos accompanied her to Hungary and became a prominent political figure there, serving as regent at one point. A new opportunity for the Serbs to challenge Byzantine control came in the mid-12th century, when another conflict erupted between Byzantium and the Normans of southern Italy. This war spread across Europe as both sides sought allies. The Byzantines found support from the German Hohenstaufen dynasty and Venice, while the Normans allied with the Hohenstaufen rivals, the Welfs, and also the Hungarians. This brought the Serbs into the fray as well, under the leadership of Grand Prince Uroš II. This proved to be a miscalculation, as while preparing to cross into southern Italy, the Byzantines decided to deal with the Serbs first. In 1149, they demolished the fortress of Ras, which had remained in Serbian hands after the previous war. Serbian forces retreated inland, but in 1150, at the Battle of the Tara River, speculated to have taken place near the modern town of Valjevo, Emperor Manuel I Komnenos personally defeated the joint Hungarian-Serbian army, forcing Uroš II to return to vassalage. Uroš II ruled for about a decade longer, though briefly deposed by his brother Desa and later restored by Emperor Manuel. Desa eventually succeeded him, and there are some indications that he came into possession of Zahumlje and Travonia. Nevertheless, this did not help him to resist Byzantine domination with any greater success. Around 1165, he was captured and imprisoned by the Byzantines. He may have returned to Serbia later, but not to power. His fall marked the end of the Vukanović dynasty and the rise of another, one whose legacy would eclipse all that came before and whose name would resonate throughout Serbian history. But that is the topic of our next episode. Thank you for watching. If you would like to learn how the Nemanjić dynasty transformed Serbia from a principality into a kingdom and later into an empire, subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified when the next episode is released. And do not forget to leave your impressions in the comments below. See you next time!